Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's community talk. What is social thinking and what are the benefits? The Summit School, through its Resource Center, is pleased to provide a series of talks open to the public and free of charge. The talks are designed to bring relevant, timely, and actionable information to parents and educators. Tonight's presenter is Eileen Wallace. Eileen is a speech-language pathologist with more than 25 years working with students with learning differences. Currently, her areas of focus include reading, both decoding and comprehension, executive function skills, and social thinking. Eileen has completed the social thinking clinical training program, deeply exploring the methodology and observing clinicians in the social thinking clinic near Boston, Massachusetts. She continues to grow her knowledge and experience and bring this expertise into the classroom. At the Summit School, Eileen teaches social thinking classes to students across grades 1 through 8. She consults with teachers, provides professional development to staff, completes oral language evaluations, and works with individual students to support language development. Elaine also has a private practice in Bowie, Maryland. So, without any further delay, I'd like to introduce to you Eileen Wallace.
Good evening, everyone. And if you have your cameras on, thanks. If you don't, I get it. I understand. Do whatever makes you the most comfortable. My name, as Jess said, my name is Eileen Wallace, and I am a speech-language pathologist. My early work was with people with brain injuries. And I worked up in Boston and in acute care right after their injury, and then longer term care once a year or so after their injury. I was working with people. And when I returned to the Washington area, I did a little bit more head injury work. And then I also started working with children. I've been at Summit for about 16 years. And my role at Summit is as a speech language pathologist, working individually with kids and students who I pull from class. And then I also work at Summit in all of the classrooms, grades 1 through 8. I meet with each grade every other week for social thinking classes. And then I also work with the teachers and work with students just on strategies for language and facilitating language development. So we will just get started with what is social thinking. So social thinking is the name of a company that was created by Michelle Garcia Winner. But social thinking is also a concept. It's what we do when we interact with people, and we have to think about them. And we have to think about how we are affecting them and how our behavior is affecting them. And that is going to result in their having a reaction to us. So they're going to be responding to us, and it may be just a natural response where things are going smoothly and there's no visible response, just people continuing to interact. And then there's also, when we do something unexpected, there's a response from the people with whom we are sharing space. They're surprised, they're uncomfortable, and we have to be taking that information in, and we have to be problem solving. So it's a multi-step process that happens in milliseconds. First, we have to socially attend, then we have to interpret, then we have to problem solve, and then we have our social response. So there's so many steps involved, and as I said, they happen rapidly. And for a lot of students, children, they're not happening, and adults, they're not happening. What I say to the students at Summit is, you're not in a social thinking class because you're a Summit student. You're in a social thinking class because we all have to be social thinkers. Some of the kids feel like this is going to be over by 8th grade, and I've explained that you are a social thinker until you take your last breath. So it's enlightening to kids to realize that this is something that they have to pay attention to. The next slide, please. So STM is the social thinking methodology, and it teaches how the social world works and how to navigate within that world. And that's something that we don't think of as requiring explicit instruction, but it absolutely does for a lot of people. And again, you don't need a diagnosis to need instruction in this. I think just what's happening with our world and our culture, so many things being online. So we've got social media, we have texting, we have communication while we're playing video games. We're not interacting face-to-face socially as much as we used to, completely unrelated to the pandemic. And then you add the pandemic on top of that. So this is a process that we use to just teach children and adults how to navigate the social world. The social thinking methodology has lots of frameworks that are evidence-based, concept strategies, and they're available on their website, which is socialthinking.com. I have never seen a company or a website provide so much free information. It's amazing what they provide. They have free webinars, and they also have webinars that you can pay for and you have access to for several months. So I encourage you to look on their website for articles, webinars, signing up for their newsletter. There's just a wealth of information for you. The next slide, please. So the major themes, or the way we have to look at this, is that people who pay attention to others make others feel good. When you make others feel good, they want to be with you. Students have to think about what others are thinking. And this is something that we take for granted. It's amazing how many people don't think about how others are reacting to them. A student or an adult can tell you the 10 things that you do that bother them, but when you suggest there's a possibility that they do something that's making people uncomfortable, they're really quite surprised. So the part of this process is to teach kids, people, students, adults, people have thoughts about you. They're reacting to you and what you're doing. We have to realize that you have thoughts about me right now. I have thoughts about you, and I have to change my behavior based on the thoughts that I think you might be having or the thoughts I'm having about you. So social thinking is done in all environments. You are a social thinker even when you're in a room by yourself watching a TV show. You're thinking socially. You're thinking, why did the character do that? Ooh, that makes me feel uncomfortable. Well, I wouldn't have done that. That's social thinking. So we see it in the home, on sports teams, in the classrooms, out in recess yard. And the thing about social thinking is it really stresses the first thing that you have to look at is the social situation. It's not that a behavior is appropriate or inappropriate. It's that, is that behavior expected in that social situation? For instance, yelling is not going to be expected if you're at the dinner table or if you're in class. But that's a completely expected behavior if you're playing a game where yelling is involved, or if you're out at recess. So we can't label behaviors. We have to really first look at situations. And the next slide, please. So social thinking encompasses a lot of different programs. And what we're doing is we're teaching people to think socially. We're not teaching social skills. Social skills are teaching behaviors. And again, and I sound like I'm repeating myself here, but it's incredibly important. We're not teaching eye contact. We're teaching adults and children to look at the speaker and think about what they're talking about, or what they're looking at, or what they're doing. So eye contact is a behavior, but I can have great eye contact and not be thinking about you. I could be thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner. So again, it's really important to think of this far beyond teaching social skills or social behaviors that people think are acceptable. And the next slide, please. So this is kind of reiterating what I just said. You have to think socially before you can act socially. As a speech language pathologist, I took classes in pragmatic language, and we did social skills groups, and I didn't always love them because you taught children the skills that they should have in the situation that they were in, and then they walked out of the treatment room and they really weren't able to apply the skills that you had just taught in the treatment session in the small group. And that's why you have to get at the root of it. You have to have them think socially before they can use the skills and carry those skills over into different situations outside of the classroom or outside of the treatment room. Next slide, please. So these, now what I'm going to do is just show you some of the materials and talk about the concepts and the frameworks that are related to those materials. So this is a group of a variety of the books that they sell on their website. And I use each of these in different capacities when I'm working with students individually, in small groups, and in the classroom. Next slide, please. This We Thinkers series is for the younger children. So if you have younger children, this is every preschool, every first grade, kindergarten and first grade class should have these two sets of books. They go through 10 of their important concepts. I'm going to briefly just tell you what each one of these concepts is. Just because the concept is introduced or can be introduced in preschool or kindergarten or first grade does not mean it ends there. We also, the next slide is going to show you the exact same 10 concepts, but the materials they use for the older kids. This is something that if I were working with a 40-year-old person, I would be teaching these concepts as well. So thinking thoughts and feeling feelings, the first step is just to help people understand the interconnection between thoughts and feelings. We have them together and they're related. And not all children and adults realize that I'm thinking thoughts about what you're saying and I'm having feelings about it. One of the things that I ask children is, how often does your mom or your dad yell upstairs to wake you up in the morning? And no one says once. Usually the answer is 3-4 times. And I say, what do you think your parent or your guardian or your grown-up is thinking as they yell up the stairs the 3rd time? And it's pretty surprising how many kids look at you and say, that I need to get up. And then when I say, what might they be feeling? They often aren't going to even attach a feeling word. So when I say your parent might be thinking, I can't believe he hasn't gotten out of bed yet. I can't believe she's making me stop my routine one more time. Their feeling might be concern. Feeling might be worry. Their feeling might be frustration. So it's really interesting that you have to provide explicit instruction to help them understand that by not getting out of the bed and by requiring the parent to call upstairs again, that parent is having thoughts and feelings about it. And again, the children will tell you what their thoughts and feelings are. Why are they bothering me? I'm annoyed. I'm tired. But it's important for them to understand that the parent's having some thoughts and feelings too. The group plan is what everybody in the room should be thinking about. And the visual for this is great. It's the picture of the adult in the room, if it's a teacher, and then lots of little figures. They all have little bubbles, and it all leads to the same thought bubble. So at dinner time, the group plan is to eat nicely, listen to your siblings and your guests at the table, and to participate when people are asking questions. The group plan in the classroom is to participate when you're asked to sit quietly when the teacher is talking, to look at the book if the teacher's reading a book to you, to engage in the activity if you're working with classmates. And by having that vocabulary, the group plan, everybody can talk about, is your brain in the group? Are you still paying attention? It's a different way of asking, are you focusing? Are you listening? Are you following? We can also talk about, is your body in the group? Because we have lots of people who just kind of wander away from the group. They wander away from the group activity. They turn their shoulders away from the teacher and start to look out the window. So we teach children and adults, is your body in the group? Is your body turned toward the group? So again, body and brain can roll out of the group. Sometimes I have little marbles and I put them on a table and a child wanders off. You can see their brain roll right out of the group. They start looking out the window. So I just quietly pull a little bead. I have the beads on the table and I pull a little bead off away from the group. And before I've done that, we've talked about the beads don't represent specific people. It just means one person. And the other thing I teach is you're not allowed to say, Johnny, she's talking about you. You have to take care of yourself. And everybody has to check in on their own body and their own thinking and ask themselves, am I in the group? So you're teaching self-evaluation. You're teaching them to think about their behavior. And then you're teaching them to re-enter the group. And you're also teaching people to inhibit the desire to bump the kid next to him and say, she just rolled that bead out of the group and it's you. So you're teaching them self-control too. Number 5 is whole body listening, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. We think of kids listening with their ears, but we really listen with our whole body. And we do that by basically keeping our body still or not speaking. And again, I'll go into that in more detail when we get to that screen. Hidden rules and expected and unexpected behaviors. There's a lot of information in that concept. Hidden rules are the things that you know you should or shouldn't do, but nobody taught you. And we go into a room and we figure out the hidden rules pretty quickly. And some of our students don't go into the room and figure out the hidden rules. So they might start to do things that are unexpected. And when we do something that's unexpected, we're just not making people in the room feel comfortable. When we do things that are expected, then we're making people feel comfortable and their desire is to want to spend time with us. When we do things that are unexpected, if I'm in class and I haven't figured out the hidden rule is I don't turn around and talk to somebody while the teacher's talking, I might be annoying the child that I am talking to, and they might not want to sit next to me the next day. So just the whole idea that what we're doing is leading them to having thoughts and feelings, there's going to be a consequence. They're going to not want to sit next to us, or they're going to tell us to be quiet, and then we're going to have a feeling about that. Smart guess is a fun way to say an inference. A smart guess is when you look around and you take what you know and you take what you see and you make a smart guess about it. I'm at the dinner table. I'm goofing off. I look up. Mom and dad are kind of giving me a look. I'm going to make a really smart guess that they want me to stop. So we teach kids how important it is to make a smart guess. And there's so many things that come into that. Thinking with your eyes, noticing that your mom and dad are looking at you, thinking about what they might be thinking. The next one is flexible and stuck thinking. This is something that we can all work on, I think. A lot of our children have difficulty taking perspective. They see it their way, and there's no other way to see it, no matter what you say. So they're stuck in the way they're looking at it, and they're having a hard time flexibly looking at that situation in a different way. We also see stuck thinking. If I am working or playing Roadblocks or Minecraft and you call me for dinner and I don't get up, I'm stuck. So there's lots of different ways to react to that. If we're looking at it from a social thinking perspective, one good way is to say, you seem to be stuck, rather than you're just, you're not listening to me. You seem to be stuck on that activity. So right now, let's find a strategy to help you shift from that activity to dinner, which is what you need to do right now. And that strategy might be, you can go back to it after dinner. I'm going to give you 5-minute warnings before I call you for dinner. So you set strategies up to really facilitate unstuck thinking. Number 9 is the size of the problem. Again, something we can all work on. We want our reaction to match the size of the problem. So if I don't get the colored trapper that I want, in the beginning of the year at Summit, the kids get trapper, the students all get trappers. And one year, one child wanted a pink trapper and the child didn't get a pink trapper. And the reaction, that child's reaction, was not in line with the size of the problem. Now, that child can feel really big inside because to them, not getting the pink trapper is pretty upsetting. One of the things that we teach children is you can feel big inside, which is FBI, and you can express it small publicly, so ESP. And you can change these around to whatever vocabulary or language works best for kids. So I can feel really big inside. For instance, when I heard the repairman in the garage looking at the heater this evening tell my husband that we might need a new one, I felt super big inside, really big inside, but I had to express it small publicly. I had to just say, oh, could you tell us a little bit more about that? So that's what we teach children. What's the size of the problem? Is it small? Can you solve it yourself? Is it medium? Do you need an adult to help you? Is it big? Is it going to have long-term effects? That's a sick family member. Your family pet died. There was a major flood. There, different things that have a long-term impact. Some of our students feel like homework is a big problem. Again, it's more small or medium, but I will not tell a child how to feel because that's not what social thinking is about. But I will try and help them understand that, yes, that feels big, but the reaction to it has to be small or medium. And then number 10 is sharing imagination. And sharing an imagination is an incredibly important, I almost think it could be number 1 or 2. It's an incredibly important concept. When we share an imagination, we can think about what the person who is speaking to us is thinking about. So if I'm talking about my vacation and you're creating images in your head about my vacation, we're sharing an imagination. If we are on the recess yard and we're pretending to play and I'm going to be, the firefighter, that's one of the books that they have for sharing imagination. I'm going to be the firefighter and you're going to be the person with the house, then we have to share that imagination. We have to be able to take on those roles. The children that you see that are doing pretend play, that are not able to take on those roles, or the child who mandates who everybody in the group has to be, and that child is always going to be the same person, that can be a child who's having difficulty with shared imagination. Shared imagination is really important for empathy. It's hard to be empathetic towards someone if you can't imagine where they are and what they're talking about. So again, quick overview of these 10 concepts. We just work those throughout the school year. Last year, what we did is we did a concept about almost a month for about 3 weeks. And we did morning activities related to those concepts in our morning announcements. So we do try and weave them in throughout the day for the students. Jess, if you don't mind moving to the next one, please. It just shows the visual. Again, the same 10 concepts, but here are the visuals that you're using. We're not doing storybooks with the older kids, but here that we have posters, those 10 concepts in posters, and teaching the concepts that way. Next, please. This is Whole Body Listening Larry, and these are books that were not written by the owners and the people that work at Social Thinking, but they do sell other people's products that really support their concepts and frameworks. And this is a great one. Larry listens with his whole body, and his eyes, his ears, his mouth, his hands, his feet, his body, and he faces the speaker, and his brain and his heart. And especially the brain and heart are some things that we don't necessarily think about. So if I say, I had a really tough day yesterday, and the person who is speaking to doesn't acknowledge that, or they say, oh, my day was great, and they move on, have they really listened with their heart? Have they shown that they're caring about what the other person is saying? So this is a fabulous way to teach people that we don't just listen with our ears. It's also a great way to help people become more aware of the body movement that they don't even know they're doing. I will point things out to students in school. They don't know they've been tapping their foot. They don't know that they're bumping their hand, or they have their pen in their hand and they're hitting it against the desk. I had one student who said not long ago, I had no idea that I was even doing that. And then I started to look around and I saw my friends weren't happy about it. So that child had made a lot of progress in noticing that people were reacting and then using that to try and stop himself, because he realized what was happening in the classroom. So Whole Body Listening Larry, again, has some books. They have they've edited these books because they've seen some of the things that they had in the first series that they just weren't that comfortable with when they looked at it from a different point of view. So they've recreated both of these books with some changes in them. And that's one of the neat things about the company of social thinking, is that they're constantly updating materials and advancing their materials as they learn more. It's not a company who has created concepts and frameworks and said, this is it, here we are. They're really taking feedback from people around the world, and they're changing and they're adding to what they're doing. So the next slide introduces.
Eileen?
Yes.
There's a question about the small, medium, and large problem.
Okay.
The question is, a small problem means a child can solve. What was a medium or a large problem?
A medium problem, the child is going to need some help. So I got to school, I need help from an adult. I got to school and I don't have my homework with me. You know, if they're in 8th grade, they can probably solve that themselves. They can email a parent. They can talk to the teacher individually, or, you know, they've left a uniform at home. They've left an after school, a sports uniform at home. A younger child that's going to be a medium-sized problem for a younger child instead of a small one, because they're going to need to go to the office and ask Miss Amanda, can you please call my mom and tell her I left my cleats at home? So small is they can handle it on their own. Medium is they're going to need an adult to help them. And big is long-term impact. And again, really important related to that is that I never, and I'm repeating myself, but I never want a child to feel like they're being told how to feel. That is never anything we would do. These are your feelings. Think about them. Think about your reaction to them, and think about how people are going to react to your reaction. So feelings are okay. We should all feel everything, but it's how we respond to our feelings that we're really addressing here. Thank you. And please interrupt if there are any more questions. The next, one of the other curricula are we're social detectives. And this is the Superflex curriculum. And this teaches children that we all have different smarts. And, we'll draw a brain and a bunch of different sections in the brain. And what are your smarts? Legos, roadblocks, music. I have no musical smarts. And I'll say to the kids, this isn't something I have. Sports smarts, social thinking smarts. So to help children understand that we're not all the same, and it's okay that some of the smarts that I have, you don't have. And we can build our smarts. And again, we talk about expected behavior and unexpected behavior. Expected makes people feel comfortable. Unexpected gives people weird feelings or makes them uncomfortable. They don't use the terms appropriate and inappropriate because there's just more of a judgment related to them. With the social detective, we use our eyes, our ears, and our brains, and we take information in and we think about it. So this is a great book, helping the child realize that they are a social detective. And the next slide, please. We'll get into the superflex. And we all have a superflex within us. And I have a page that has this outline of the superflex, and we can take a picture of the child and put their picture in the face, and then they can color the cape any color they want. And the superflex in us defeats the unthinkables. And the unthinkables are these 14 characters on the green poster. And these are characters that invade us. And I say to the kids, even your grandparents have unthinkable invasions. We all have them. So when they created this curriculum, they just picked these 14. They now have about 82 of them, and many of them were designed by students. Summit kids have designed their own unthinkables. And the unthinkable just makes you not think about the people that you're sharing space with. So one that we see a lot of is rock brain, which is in the top left, the rock. And that, when you don't become rock brain, because we don't do any name calling, you have a rock brain invasion. And rock brain's power is that it gets you stuck on whatever you're thinking about. And that would be the example I gave earlier. You need to go to dinner, you need to do your homework, but you're stuck on whatever it is that you were doing. Another very common one is brain eater. Brain eater is the octopus that has all the different objects. Brain eater and rock brain might be working together. And brain eater is something that you see that causes you to be distracted. So lots of brain eater invasions in the classroom. When I teach these to the students, I often say, create your team. Who is on your team of brain eater invasions? Because we all have different people. There are some students that are never, ever, ever going to have a mean gene invasion. It's that child that just is not doing anything that can be interpreted as, wow, that was mean. But that same child might have a lot of worry wall invasions where they worry so much that they can't take a chance. They can't try something new. They can't enter a situation. But again, most of us have several invasions that recur pretty frequently or most commonly. One of the ones that we see a lot in the classroom is the clown on the right side, or was funny once. And a lot of people interpret that as the child who tells you the same joke over and over and over again, and that's one of them. I think we probably have all seen that. But was funny once is simply using humor at the wrong time, in the wrong place, or with the wrong people. So it's more than just you said the joke over and over again. It's that you told that joke that probably should have been a joke for your friends out during recess, and you told it during class. So wrong place, wrong people. After a couple years of the unthinkables, social thinking heard from their community, and they heard the kids are feeling like there's too much negative. This is the invasion, this is the invasion. So they created thinkables to pair up to these 14 unthinkables. And these thinkables give you the power to defeat the unthinkable. And this is really a great positive way of showing the students that there are strategies to defeat every single one of these unthinkables. So we play games, we play bingo, lots of different activities designed around understanding the unthinkable invasion and the thinkables and the strategies that they give you so that you can have your superflex defeat the unthinkable. So kids really enjoy this. The other day, one of the students raised his hand and said, Mrs. Wallace, can I tell you all my favorite unthinkables? And I said, help me understand, what does that really mean? Does that mean the ones you like to see invade, or are those the unthinkables that just invade the most often? And he said, those are the unthinkables that invade the most often. So it's great to see kids self-evaluate. And there was a young boy in the classroom who's incredibly new to the school. It was the first time that this child had ever seen the Unthinkables, and he looked up and he said, "I think mine are," and read 3, and I think he was spot on. So it was a neat opportunity to be able to say to somebody, wow, you really know yourself. And now you know what you need to work on, and we can help you. We can give you some strategies and help with that. So it's a very friendly way to talk about things that can be awkward, and to find a positive way to help children understand it's okay that this happens, and we're going to help you figure out how to make it happen less often or to a smaller degree. So the next slide will show you some of the books. They now have 4 or 5 of the books that tell the story of Superflex defeating some of the Unthinkables. And what they've done in a lot of the books is they've paired up the Unthinkables that tend to invade together. One-sided Sid is the Unthinkable that makes us only talk about ourselves. And the Unwonderer is the Unthinkable that makes us not wonder about other people. So when somebody is telling a story and you have a student who's not asking any questions, who is just telling their story that's a little bit similar, but they're not engaging. Again, probably a shared imagination problem. But you can use this story to talk about those invasions without talking about the students that are in the room with you. Great stories, and a lot of the kids can see themselves in a lot of the stories. The next slide gets into the social behavior mapping. And this is where we really help people connect their behavior with emotions and consequences. So you ask the students to identify, was their behavior expected or unexpected? And then how did people feel about it? What did they do as a result of their feelings? And then how did you feel at the end of the situation? So I believe the next slide will talk to us, show us a little bit about expected behaviors and unexpected behaviors. So as I've said a couple times, the expected behaviors, they're just going to make people have comfortable thoughts. Expected behaviors in a classroom are going to help people learn, and they're going to allow the student to be seen in a positive light by his peers and teachers. And that's really what, the end of the day, what we want to be happening. The unexpected behaviors are going to make people have uncomfortable or weird thoughts. Again, we're not calling anybody weird, but you can probably think of some situations where somebody did something and you just felt like, I have a kind of a weird thought about that. I'm not really comfortable with it. Unexpected behaviors interfere with learning, and these behaviors may frustrate teachers and peers. And again, we're getting back to teaching the kids that and the students and adults, that their behaviors do lead to a reaction in the people that are around them, who are around them. So the next slide is an example of one of the posters, and then we have these same format in sheets that we can do with the students. And again, you identify the situation first. That's incredibly important, because as I mentioned in the beginning, the situation determines what is expected and what's unexpected. So the situation might be lining up in the hallway. In this one, the situation is listening to the teacher talk. And you don't have to do this with the kids after an incident has occurred. It's a really neat idea to do this in the beginning of class, or to do this right before you go on a field trip. If the students go on a field trip, I'll do this before they go. And I'll say, okay, what are the behaviors that are going to be expected? And we'll list them. And then I jump down to, now let's talk about the behaviors that are unexpected. And those are so much more fun to talk about. They really engage in that. And then we carry that sequence across to the right. So the unexpected behavior, what are the feelings that others have about my behavior? So if I am on my way to a field trip and the unexpected behavior is I stand up in the bus, what are the feelings that the people around us are going to have? Well, the bus driver is going to be annoyed. The teacher might be worried. The students might be entertained. So what you're getting at there is there's several different perspectives. there's several different people who are responding to you, and they may have very conflicting feelings about it. And you can talk about, well, the kids that are entertained by your unexpected behavior really have to be careful that doesn't make you continue the unexpected behavior. It's the bus driver and the teacher's responses that you have to react to change your behavior. So again, you can see that there's so many different components that we all have to process very rapidly, make decisions, and problem solve in split seconds. So after we talk about the feelings of the people that are on the bus or in the room, then we talk about how others treat me because of what I did and the feelings they have about it. And for the bus driver, he may pull over on the side of the road. Bus driver can't go down Route 50 taking you to DC if you're standing up on the bus. Or the teacher might tell you to sit down, or you are going to get an email to your parents. So again, having the child think through before they even engage in this situation, be a future thinker, put their future thinking glasses on and visualize and talk about what might be ahead. And this is a really important skill for executive functioning as well. And the fourth section is, how do I feel based on how they treated me? And the kid on the bus might end up mad. A lot of times they say mad, angry, annoyed. And then we talk about, with whom are you annoyed? And a lot of times it's the person, I'm annoyed at the teacher that she corrected me, or I'm annoyed at my classmate who told me to sit down. And then you can trace back the behavior. Why did they tell you to sit down? Because they were worried. Why were they worried? Because you stood up on the bus. So the boomerang of how I feel is completely related to what I did, my unexpected behavior, or my expected behavior. So this chain of events teaches responsibility as well. It teaches students and adults, I'm responsible for how people are reacting to me. I'm responsible for how I feel about how they're reacting to me. So after we go through the unexpected, then we bounce back up to the expected, and we complete that part of the chart. How others are feeling if I do something expected, what might happen. We have extra time at the zoo, or we have extra time wherever we are because there weren't any problems and we got there safely and quickly. And then how I feel based on what happened after I did this expected thing. So again, it's a lot of language. It's a lot of conversation. It's over we do these things from first grade to 8th grade, and they're so situational. They actually put out a book that has probably 50 behavior maps filled out for parents and teachers, from hygiene, from going to visit at a friend's house, sleepover, all these different situations. So it's a consistent way of dealing with what we do in a variety of situations. So the next slide talks about the boring moment. And I hope you all haven't had boring moments, but if you've had boring moments and your camera is on, you've done things that are expected. You have continued to look at the screen. You've looked into the screen. You've kind of nodded a little bit. So we teach kids, you are going to get bored. And I don't know how many parents are aware of how often children might say, this is boring, in the middle of the class. And we talk about, how does that make other students feel? How does that make the teacher feel? Is everything going to be exciting? Are some things just going to be boring in life? And the bottom line is, yes, they are. So we just explicit instruction, and here's what's expected of you when you're bored. And here's what's unexpected when you're bored. It's a great jumping off point for some good conversations. And this is one of the things that Social Thinking, the company, does really well, is they bring up those hard conversations for you to get the kids to think socially about those conversations. So perspective taking is a very big part of social thinking. And this is just one of the one of the materials that they have with lots of different think sheets that allow just different experiences that we can do with the children to get them to talk about, am I thinking about you or am I thinking about me? And how many people are in the room? That's how many perspectives are in the room. That there isn't necessarily a right perspective and a wrong perspective. There are different perspectives. And I think most people would say this is probably a challenge for a lot of students, and there's no quick fix. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of conversation, a lot of role playing, but this is one of the things that we address a lot. This has a major impact on comprehension, problem solving, and relationships across a lifetime. So it's a really important skill to work on. The next, this, I'm not going to read this to you. I included this because look how much we do before we even interact. So we walk into a room and we notice the situation and the people. And then we have to be aware that we're thinking about each other. I'm thinking about you, you're thinking about me, I'm thinking about you and what you might be thinking about me. I'm also thinking about, why are people here? What are they feeling? I mean, you can picture yourself going into being in a grocery store line, a student going to find somebody to sit with at lunch. All of this happens so quickly, but all of these things are happening in our brains. And what we have to be doing is watching how people are responding to us and then altering what we're doing based on what we see when we monitor ourselves. A lot of people don't monitor. A lot of people don't see what's going on. So this is something that we provide instruction through these activities to help them self-monitor, self-evaluate, and adjust their behaviors. The next slide is, again, the size of the problem. I can feel big inside, but I need to express it small outside. And what we teach is that if you have a small problem and you have a very big reaction, then there's a new problem. So that original problem, I didn't get my pink trapper, and you're on the floor crying, what becomes the issue that everybody is working with is the fact that you're on the floor crying, not that you didn't get your pink trapper. So a bigger reaction than the size of the problem leads to another problem. And again, this is a great way to talk about things with students, children, your children, children in a classroom after the moment. So let's talk about what was the problem, what size do you think that was? And that's a really good discussion to get into, because what we might consider a small problem, the student or our child is considering it a medium problem. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really important for me to acknowledge that's medium to you and it's small to me. I respect that it's a medium problem to you, but you still can't have a medium reaction, because the people around you are going to get very uncomfortable with that. So that's one of the visuals for size of the problem. The next slide is just an overview of some of the vocabulary that's used in social thinking and in other areas outside of social thinking. Thought bubbles and talking bubbles, we teach children that just because it's in your thought bubble doesn't mean it should come out your talking bubble. And in the beginning of the year, I gave templates to the younger classes, and there was a picture of a thought bubble on one and a talking bubble on the other. They decorated their thought bubble. We cut them out and laminated them. And then I would say something in class, and I would give them the situation. You are in class, you are tired, and your thought is, I want to go home. And then they would hold up their thought bubble if they thought that should stay in their thought bubble, and they would hold up their talking bubble if they thought that was okay to let out their talking bubble. Great conversations. And then we did the exact same thought. You are outside waiting for carpool, and your thought is, I can't wait to go home. And it was much more expected to hold up a talking bubble for that situation, because it's okay to say that as you're getting, your dad's coming to pick you up for carpool, or you're getting on the bus to go home. That's a perfectly expected thing to say. However, if you're in the middle of class, I can't wait to go home really shouldn't come out your talking bubble. It should come out your thought bubble. We talk about filters in your water filter, your air filter, your car filter, and what a filter's job is, and that we all have filters in our brains. Some of our filters have holes that are bigger than they need to be, and we need to make those holes smaller so that fewer things come out of our thought bubble and go into our talking bubble. I mentioned earlier, brain in the group, body rolled out of the group, brain rolled out of the group, smart guesses. Wacky guess is just a great term to use for the student who just says something to get things derailed, to get you away from what you might want to be doing, because he doesn't know the answer, she doesn't know the answer, and they're going to throw out a wacky guess. And it's just a nice way to say before an activity, hey guys, it's really important, smart guesses only today. And you're training the students who want to say the funny thing at the unexpected time to try and keep that funny thing in their thought bubble. Friend files and people files are really important. We all have files on one another. You guys are creating an Eileen Wallace people file. Whatever's going in it is based on what your thoughts are right now. If you see an opportunity to come to another community talk that I'm doing, you're going to pull out your Eileen Wallace and be, that was a good talk, I might sign up for that. Or no, she really didn't have anything to say that I was interested in. But you're going back to the people file and your previous experiences, and you're pulling those experiences up, and you're making decisions based on those experiences. And that's what we need to teach kids, that we do all the time. And that's an executive function. Like we're looking back to make decisions about the future. It also helps kids understand when you do something, it doesn't just go away. So if you are a student that is cutting in front of the line all the time, your peers' people files on you, that's going to be in it. And sometime one day they might act a little bit more annoyed than they did the day before, because it's in their people file that this is a behavior that you keep doing. It helps kids understand that over time, their behaviors may become more frustrating to people or appreciated more by people. We also talk about how you can change your people files, and Miss Nelson is Missing is a great book to talk about that. Miss Nelson completely changed her people file on her students after she left and her substitute came in, and they all changed their behavior. So we think it's really important for children to realize that you can dump your people file and you can give somebody another chance. I mentioned following the hidden rules, and also just that rules change. Kids, but yesterday you said, well, the rules did change, and that's something that's mental flexibility. We have to explicitly teach that sometimes. I think we might have a few more. I already talked about tolerating the boring moment. The social fake is, you might not want to ask me how I am, but go ahead and say, how are you? When I say, hey, how are you today? The social fake is, I'm great, how are you? That might not be a great example. The social fake might be your grandmother gave you that knitted sweater and you don't love it. And the social fake is, thank you so much, this was so nice of you. And you seem to love it. I'm not teaching anybody to lie and tell everybody they love it, but you're faking the inside feeling you have of, I'm never going to wear this sweater, Grandma. So we're teaching people to care about how others feel. Don't feed your jerk, and don't wake up somebody's inner jerk. We all have an inner jerk inside us, and sometimes we just feed each other's inner jerks. And I've said in class sometimes, wow, you're kind of feeding my jerk, and I'm going to try not to react, but can you try not to say the things that you're saying right now? Because they need to understand that we can stop behavior when we're not feeding the right part of each other. Size of the problem we've talked about. And then in conversation, we teach, certainly a part of social thinking is teaching people how to continue the conversation, ask people questions, bridging questions, add a thought, make a connection, make a comment. And a lot of these strategies are related to comprehension strategies that we use and to verbal expressive strategies. The ties between all of these areas are very deep. And that's why it's important to work on these areas throughout the day with our students. I believe that the last slide is just has the resources, and those are all from the Social Thinking website. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for giving up an hour of your evening. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer any questions that you might have.